Now. Just a quick note too, there are some brownies over on the table by the front there, so please go over, help yourself. I figured if people are going to listen to me talk for an hour or so, the least I can do is provide a few refreshments, so please go help yourself. So this is basically going to be a combination of some of my historic explorations looking for artifacts, and there's also some Downeaster shots I've taken over the years. That's another New England area of interest for me, as well as just a few shots I've taken in the past year or so since I did my last presentation. So a little bit of a potpourri, I guess you could say. So this first shot here, this was taken back in 2007. I was trying to trace some of the remnants of the old Maynard and Marlborough branch. Sort of a branch I feel like kind of gets forgotten, just hadn't really seen too many photos of it. And this little section of Maynard here, I believe, was part of the right-of-way that I was able to find. It took me a little while of driving around, but then I finally found this piece here that I sort of confirmed on Google Maps back at the time. Interesting tidbit about this location, the mill complex you can see in the distance there. Years ago, were some of the offices of the old Digital Equipment Corporation were located there. And my father actually worked there for many, many years as an accountant for Digital. So he was actually very familiar with this area, this location, and it was kind of cool to sort of trace some remnants of the railroad history that had, at this time had long been abandoned. Then this is the other end. This was part of the branching away from South Acton at the time. This was taken prior to the commuter rail station being rebuilt there, and I think much of this nowadays is either a rail trail or has been completely obliterated. So even the change from back then to current day is noticeably different. So I remember back at that time, a lot of the rail trails that we have nowadays hadn't quite been fully conceptualized. So there was still a decent amount to be found back in the mid to late 2000s that doesn't necessarily exist to this present day. Another case in point to that, this is the Wakefield Center station, also known as the Omelette Headquarters. Nowadays. So nowadays the tracks are completely gone. It's a paved rail trail through the town. I don't officially think it's open as of yet. They're still doing construction on it, but as of today, there's no iron left. So, and this is also taken late winter 2007, and that maroon Honda Accord there, that was my first car, so that kind of helps me date the photo as well. 6211 in Bedford. This was before the cosmetic restoration. You can see the freight house in the background before the site really got spruced up, I guess you could say. You can see the tracks had just been planted down there to put the car on display for. The curbing had been added recently, but this was before the real cosmetic restoration had taken place.
Andrew, what year was this?
This mill, I believe this was spring of 2007 I took this photo in. I believe they had moved the car across the street within that year, or maybe in 2006, but because I had another photo that I had taken when the car was still on the other side of the street, but this is when they had placed it. They were starting to build the display, but they really hadn't really started the cosmetic restoration. So this was sort of in the early stages of building what's now currently Depot Park.
Yeah, it's really quite nice, and the depot is almost like a railroad bookshop.
Yep, you can actually see the old depot in the back, to the right there in the background, back when it was painted blue. The depot has since been beautifully restored as well. So if you haven't been to Depot Park, I highly recommend checking it out.
There's a barber shop in there now, right?
I think it is, Bill. Yeah, I do think it's a barber shop now, but it's a beautiful location. You got a depot, a freight house, and a bud car. So it's well worth a visit, especially if you're into cycling too. It's at the end of the famous Minuteman Bikeway. So you can really take a nice bike ride out there, bring a picnic. There's a lot to enjoy there. So I highly recommend checking it out if you haven't already.
If you like to hike, the Minuteman bike trail is the only trail that they plow in order
Oh,
to walk that trail year round.
It's used by commuters, believe it or not.
yep.
Going to
It
the red line, going to the red line.
yep takes you right to Alewife Station. And I don't think I haven't seen Rick Kennard here today, but this one was for him. This is Wayland on the Central Mass, just around the site of the old Tower Hill Depot prior to rail trail conversion. This is also spring of 2007. Like I said, a lot of abandoned B&M lines back in those days had not been converted to rail trails yet, so this was kind of a interesting time that I was able to take these photos, in that there were a lot of abandoned lines around that hadn't necessarily been made into rail trails yet, so you could still easily see some iron and a few other artifacts before things really got converted and spruced up. Always thought this tangent was very interesting too, along this stretch with the high tension power lines. Then a little further out that same day, South Sudbury, the milepost, Northampton, 84 miles via the Central Mass. Still sits there today. It's been nicely painted, and nice artifact along the current day rail trail. So, but it was nice to see it back in 2007 as well. Then here we have Waltham Tower, also taken early spring of 2007. Much of this scene has changed. You can see a few freight cars to the left side there, the old Waltham Freight House to the right of those freight cars. That has all since been torn down. There's now an apartment complex in that place. And then branching off to the right there is the Bemis branch, which at that time had been abandoned for about 7 years. Just a quick little note on the subject of the Bemis branch. I'll be leading a history walk on it on Sunday, March 23rd. So if you navigate your way over to our website, you can find more details about that, as well as the sign-up sheets. So anyone in the Waltham area that's interested in the history of the line, that's just a little plug on something you can check out as well.
Even though that was abandoned, they still used it to get a track out on patrol out of the way for the passenger train. So you had access up until that crossing there where that dumpster is.
Oh, wow! I did not know. That's an interesting fact. I did not know that. Yeah, and as always with any of these presentations, if anyone has anything to add, feel free to chime in. You know, a lot of these photos when I took, sometimes I didn't necessarily know the significance of what I was photographing at the time, and looking back on it, you see stuff now, and it's interesting to hear what others might have to say.
Now, what year did they abandon the fact you could go on the Bemis and come out the other end by Cambridge?
The center of the Watertown branch was abandoned in 1960, I believe. They did that. I think the problem was it crossed Mount Auburn Street near Watertown Square at grade, and I think at the time the B&M was very anxious to get rid of that crossing, and given that there was no immediate business at Watertown Square, they realized it was easier just to abandon the center and make it into two little branch lines on either side.
Those trolley wires, too.
Yes, exactly. Yep, exactly. The trolley wires definitely made it complex there as well. Another spring of 2007. This is Northampton Station on what at one time was the Eastern Main Line all the way up to Portland. Again, this was prior to track removal, and I haven't been up there in a few years, but I believe this is also, I don't know if it's been paved, but I do believe it's a formal rail trail now. So this was, at this time, I'm not sure if there was any traffic left. I'm guessing to say no. There's a lot of rust on those rails, but this was just, I think I was heading up to Portsmouth that day and just stopped in to see what was going on, and not much. Okay, so there was, yeah. And then the station, of course, beautifully restored. Last I was aware, I think it was a real estate office. Not sure what the current use is, but I believe it still looks just as nice as it does in this photo here. Then some other shots from the late 2000s, early 2000 era. This was up at Conway Scenic, or what would become the Pan Am OCS train eventually. These were the units the Conway Scenic used on the Mountaineer train parked in the yard. I believe this was, I think, summer of 2008, 2009. I took this photo. Then this is Newburyport, Mass, at the site of the old B&M station. Again, not a formal rail trail at the time, just kind of a rough path through the woods that the locals used to get from downtown down to the area of the station. This is the exact location is Washington Street, I believe, and you can see a little bit of iron in the grass there. And I think there were a few other artifacts I found, and I think there was even still an old crossing signal at the actual crossing that was pretty decrepit, but it was still standing.
Now, was that the main line, the eastern main, or was it the city?
This would be the Eastern Main Line. Yep, heading so the bridge across the Merrimack River is maybe 3/4 of a mile from this location. I believe the city branch branched off roughly just north of where the current day commuter rail station is.
Yeah. And then stayed around.
The layover yard is at the stub end of the city branch.
Yeah, okay, yep. Yeah, that's...
All the power lines down to the water basin.
Yeah.
Then this is the Greenville branch going through West Groton. The little general store in the distance, I can see the station sign used to be above the general store sign, the blue enamel West Groton sign. Not sure exactly when that was taken down or where it went, because I do remember I came out here maybe in like 2004 and the station sign was still there, but in this picture from 2009, I believe, the sign is gone, so.
I think the sign is inside.
Oh, okay, so it's still, I know
The building can be rented if anybody wants to. It's had a for rent sign on it for probably 6 or 7 years now. Otherwise, this hasn't changed much.
yeah, this, yeah, and again, obviously at this point in time, the Greenville branch through this location, as you can see by the planters there, it's long out of service. Not sure if it was officially abandoned at this location at this time, but
They were running it until 1995. Hollingworth and Boggs had a big plant
I don't think it has been.
half a mile above there.
I don't think it has been officially abandoned.
It's owned by the state to the state line. Right, the state of Massachusetts.
By the MBTA purchase.
Yeah, yeah, by the
There's
MBTA.
about-
But I don't remember when they shut. It kind of get phased down over the years, but I don't recall they did pose abandoning it back. It was on the abandonment back in the 70s.
yeah, and
It's a load facility in air that I guess occasionally they still go up to, but everything was north of that is abandoned in place.
It's like a
Yeah.
mile
And some of it in
down.
Townsend now is a walking trail.
yeah, there's an interesting, behind me, obviously out of sight, but there's an interesting photo in Robert Willoughby Jones's 3 Colorful Decades of a plow train that derailed in West Groton. And what I always found fascinating about the photo is that the caption said the photographer was standing on what would have been the point of impact for the plow, but he moved to the other side at the last minute because it was a bit not real, obviously not expecting it to derail, but he just said, "Oh, that looks like a better place to take the photo from." You know, I'm sure he was probably quite excited that he decided to cross the tracks. So I always found that little anecdote about this location quite interesting. Then further up, I think that was the same day, I went all the way up to Greenville, New Hampshire. This looks different now. I haven't been up there in quite a while, but I believe the building, they've removed a lot of the additions that were added over the years and are trying to get it back to what it originally looked like. I don't know what the current status is, but yeah, they're trying to revert it back to what its original appearance would have been back in the days of the railroad operations.
I think they were in 1982 before it was Chinese.
Then not the most unobstructed photo, but this was West Alton, New Hampshire, driving by on Route 11. Always been one of my favorites on the lake shore, beautifully restored. And one of the previous owners of this building, which was a house at the time, actually had a diving tank in his driveway. I always thought that was kind of cool. I had an aunt and uncle who lived right up the road here in Guilford, and I was talking to them about driving by the station. My uncle said, oh yeah, next time you drive by, check out, there's a diving tank in the driveway, and you can't, I think by the time I took this shot, the diving tank was gone, but that was a really neat piece of apparatus to see as you were driving by, and just a little bit of trivia about this location. So I guess whoever owned it was a pretty active diver in Lake Winnipesaukee. Then here's a Downeaster shot I took. This is probably summer of 2009, I believe. Wells, Maine. The locomotive's in the original inaugural paint scheme that they used when service started in 2001. Enfield, New Hampshire. This was, the Northern Rail Trail was up and running at the time, but it hadn't quite reached the level of popularity that it has today. You can see the trail off to the right there. The platform's still fairly clear and unobstructed, given that passenger trains hadn't stopped here for over 40 years by the time I took this photo. And it's kind of hard to see, but if you look very carefully through the window, there's actually an ambulance parked inside the building. They added a bay door to the left side of it that you can't see, that they were parking emergency vehicles in at the time. Not sure what the current status is, if they're still doing that, but it's one of the nicer stations along the northern. Then of course the nicest along the northern, as we all know, is former Potter Place. This was another shot from 2007, I think. You can just barely see the caboose off to the left side there. You can see the very edge of it, and it's in the old green paint scheme, which has since been updated to the classic B&M maroon and gold. But I always kind of like this green paint scheme as well, and the impatience on the in the planters I really thought added some nice contrasts. So just a beautiful piece of northern New England railroading. Nice to see that it lives on. Another Downeaster shot from late, probably from like 2008, 2009. Again, the same inaugural paint scheme on the locomotive, heading past the Andover Depot in Andover, Mass. Then one of the interesting things I've always found about the Downeaster too is you never quite know when some additional equipment might be added to a consist. This was taken at Old Orchard Beach in the summer of 2008. What I thought would just be a normal train that I stopped to photograph ended up having, not sure exactly if this, what the purpose of this locomotive is on the end. Somebody more familiar with Amtrak operations might be able to chime in, but just an interesting addition to the usual consist that you can see further down there. Then this is a shot at Pine Point at the Fisherman's Co-op at the landing. There is a train there in the background. You have to look a little carefully for it. The kayakers and the boats kind of dominate the scene, but that's one of the things I've always loved about this Pine Point location, is that you get a lot of activity there in the summertime between the lobstermen, the kayakers. There's always a lot going on, and the trains really sort of fit right into the scene, I guess you could say. This is at Spy Pond in Arlington. I lived right down the street from here for a few years. And even after building the Minuteman Rail Trails we were discussing a few minutes ago, you can still find a good amount of apparatus left over from the old Lexington branch. I believe this old crossing bell still stands at Linwood Avenue to the day. I think they definitely purposely left this when they converted the rail trail, because clearly there would have been, lights and everything else on this back when the line was active. So, it's nice to see that even when they convert lines to rail trails, oftentimes they are willing to leave some artifacts along to amuse us rail fans. Vermonter heading southbound at White River Junction. Yep, always a big crowd waiting to get on at these Vermont stops I've found over the years. It's a very busy train, and White River Junction always has not as much activity as it once did have, but you know, when it's train time, you can still see a good amount of action there. Newbury, this is the old Newbury Depot along the old Concord and Claremont. It's been very, very nicely restored. It's now public restrooms for the park right alongside the lake, and you can see they've added some accessories to remind people of its railroad heritage. So Concord and Claremont, there's actually quite a lot to see along that former line. It's definitely worth, at the very least, a drive, and there are plenty of areas where you can get out and hike the old right-of-way. And they're pretty actively building a rail trail too from Concord, basically I think along the length of most of the line at this point. It seems to be a very active organization that's trying to reutilize as much of this corridor as possible, which is great, because over the years I often wondered how much of it maybe got sold off for private development or just didn't exist anymore, but it seems like a fair amount of it can still be.
They still have the two covered bridges?
The bridge at Kellyville, I believe, still stands. The second covered bridge, I'm not 100%.
They're both still there.
They're both, okay, they're both still there.
Thank you.
Then a little further up the line, this is the station at Newport, New Hampshire. I've always really liked the style of this station, the little sort of eyebrow window, I think that's called. It's actually not too different from the Stoneham Depot, which is at the corner of Pine and Franklin Streets. At the time, Newport was being used as a daycare, and hopefully maybe some of those kids at that daycare would become rail fans down the road. Another shot of a northbound Vermonter at White River Junction. Not nearly as many people waiting to get on this train, but I always kind of like the feeling of the shot. You have the one person waiting, it's getting dark out. It kind of has that feeling of anticipation as you're waiting for the train to come and take you to, you know, who knows where his final destination is, but, you know, maybe he's just going one stop, or maybe he's riding all the way through, but just that sort of feeling of anticipation you get when the train's pulling up to the platform. Another shot of the Minuteman Bikeway. This is actually the site of the former Lake Street or East Arlington station. You can see sort of to the right there the platform curbing from the former station, and just behind those shrubs on the upper right is the parking lot that was also used for the train station as well. But obviously more contemporary view, shows a family, a little girl learning how to ride her bike, and that's the much more common sight along this former line you see today, but still great to have the corridor fully intact and being enjoyed by the general public. This was kind of cool. Years back, I went into Elmwood Junction one day, or what's left of it, and I believe the history around this directory sign was, I think a local kid who was an Eagle Scout made this directory sign of the location of Elmwood Junction. Again, somebody out there correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I read at some point that that was the history behind this sign, because Elmwood Junction back in the old days was such a complex location with a multitude of structures, as you can see here. All of it's gone today. I mean, some of the roadbeds still do remain, but you know, you'd walk in there in the woods, and if you weren't aware of the area you were at, you would never guess it was a major railroad junction, you know, a century ago. So this was kind of a neat find, I thought, when I went in to explore it. I would love it if someday every former B&M or every historic railroad location would have a directory like this, just to show that there are people out there that care about cataloging this stuff and want the general public to realize, hey, you're not just hiking on a trail. This is this at one point was a major rail corridor that served the towns and served the region, and here's what you can learn while you're going on your hike. Dover Roundhouse in Dover, New Hampshire. It was a pottery studio when I went by there, and it was kind of neat. They actually even had little blue ceramic Boston and Maine trains that they were firing, so I was able to They didn't have any for sale the day that I went there, but funny enough, I asked the woman working there if I could get put on the waiting list for one. And at the time she says, well, I don't know if we'll be firing any more of these in the near future. So I was like, okay, that's fine, you know, whatever. So I just gave her my email. She emailed me, I think like 2 years later and said, hey, I don't know if you're still interested, but we have one of the trains for you. So, you know, sure enough, next time I was heading up to Maine, I stopped by and picked up my little ceramic train, which still sits on my dresser to this day. So just goes to show, you know, if somebody says, hey, give me your email or your name and I'll contact you, you know, give them your name or your email, because you never know if or when you might hear back. Former Eastern Line at Hampton Falls. This is looking south towards the Seabrook nuclear plant. You can tell at one time this was a double track right-of-way by the bridge here, and it's still a pretty popular location. You just take Depot Road all the way to where it dead ends. The station and freight house would have been behind me. A lot of people come out here to hike. A lot of people take their dogs out here, so it's pretty. Yeah, I've almost never had the location to myself, but there's a lot of neat stuff out there to check out. And I think if you look carefully above the span of the bridge that's only iron, you can see, I think it's the bridge section post. You can see there sort of to the upper left side of the right-of-way. And actually, now that I see that, I think I have a future exploration, as at the time, I don't think I photographed that. Then this is the old depot in Jaffrey, New Hampshire. It's if you couldn't guess what it is, at the very least, that sign behind the telephone pole will give you a hint, because it definitely, you can still see the bay window, but a lot of it, you know, you can tell it's been added onto over the years. It's had some renovations done, and you know, if you weren't quite sure what it was, you might not necessarily connect the dots. But I appreciate them putting that sign up there for, you know, for easier identification. And you can see the current rail trail there to the left of the building. Dual-sided stone arch culvert. This is up in Whitefield, New Hampshire. This was a trip I did with Ben English Jr. He took me on a tour of a lot of these northern New Hampshire right-of-ways, and this was a culvert we stopped at. And it was, I felt like I hadn't seen too many that had dual sides like this one did, so this seemed pretty noteworthy to stop and take a photo of. It's pretty substantial fill built on top of it too. You can kind of just see the very top of it at the very top of the photo there. And yeah, it's unfortunate that it did get tagged at some point. But
Is this on the Wolfboro, or are we?
no, I believe this was one of the line. This was just outside Whitefield, I believe. I think this might have been the line heading to Berlin. Unfortunately, yeah, the note I took on this I haven't been able to find it, but this was in the Whitefield area, because the photo I took right before this one was a trestle right by the airport.
I thought you had said Wakefield. Okay, sorry.
Oh, no worries, no. Then we ended up all the way up in Groveton that day. Milepost conquered 146 miles, basically pretty much as far north as you could get on the B&M system. This 146 would have been via Whitefield, Woodsville, Plymouth. Yeah. Yep, Boston, Concord, and Montreal. So a long way from Concord back in the old days. Some leased power. This was taken at Hazen's that same day. You can see the main central milepost to the left there. Portland, 101 miles. And I believe that journey that day, we went to a lot of locations, but this was the only actual train we saw that, or engine we saw that whole day, I should say. So it's kind of cool to see. Most of it was, 99% of that day was historic railroad exploration, but this was the one piece of current day railroading that we incorporated into it. So
What I used to call dead rail family. No trains and abandoned railroads.
yeah, plenty of that up in the North Country, but good to see there is some activity up that way too, especially now with the Vermont looking to reactivate that part of the mountain division into Whitefield. You know, hopefully operations in the North Country will continue to be resurrected, I should say. This is the depot in Somersworth. It's don't know if it's still a pizzeria. This was taken in 2010, but kind of an interesting red brick depot, sort of doesn't look like too many other Boston and Maine depots that I'm aware of, and I thought this was a really interesting one, so I stopped here for this photo.
Is it Somersworth?
Yep, Somersworth, New Hampshire. Still has trains going by the New Hampshire North Coast from Ossipee, so yep, still part of an active railroad. So this was a hike my cousin and I took into the Warren Rock Cut on the Boston Concord and Montreal. There was we didn't find the Iron Horse, but we found a non-iron horse as we were hiking. This was this was a girl. I think she was a student at the Oliverian School, which is where the rail trail dead ends at, and they currently use it as part of their equestrian program. So yeah, it was kind of cool to see. We ran into, I think, a few other hikers, a few ATVers, but seeing her out riding her horse on the rail trail, you know, is good to see that people are still appreciating the line, even after so many years of abandonment. So the corridor, yeah, exactly. You got to watch where you step, and I believe and the old Glencliff Depot, you can kind of see the yellow caution sign up ahead there. The old Glencliff Depot would have been just off to the right from where this photo was taken. So this was taken in the spring of 2010. The summer of 2010, while I was up in Maine, I took a drive up to Bath one day. Maine Eastern station right there on the right. Maine Eastern passenger train about to come through, and what might be a future rail fan, you can see his mom is holding her up, I believe, to check out the trains. So, yep, you always remember those encounters you have when you're young. So, yep, always good to see people out enjoying the railroads. The New Boston Depot. This was taken in September of 2010. Probably one of the most unique stations on the whole B&M system. I feel like this is one of those, you see it, you immediately know what it is. Beautiful fieldstone foundation, stone chimney, the old carriage port still there on the right. Yeah, beautiful paint job. I haven't been there since I took this photo, so 15 years. I hope it still looks as nice as it did in this picture. You can tell the owner of the building took a lot of pride in it, so hopefully it still looks as nice as it does here.
Is this the one that was owned by the Appalachian Mountain Club for a while, or is that another building on that branch?
I'm not aware of the AMC ever having owned this building, to be honest. I can't.
New Boston.
Yeah, I can't confirm that they never did own this building, but to the best of my knowledge, they didn't. And actually, now that I'm looking at it, that's actually old rail and ties you can see that they're sort of using as the sort of barrier around the house as well. Looking at that right now. Not sure if that was rail from the actual New Boston branch, but still kind of cool how 15 years later I'm still making discoveries as I look through some of these photos.
It's a beautiful hike, that rail trail, too.
Then this is the Lang passenger shelter. This was one of the intermediate stops on the New Boston branch. I think this was one of the only open-sided stone shelters on the Boston and Maine, if I recall that fact correctly. Another pretty unique depot. And I think since I took this photo, I think they've cleared a lot of the brush out from around the station. So good to see that over the years they're still being cared for.
Branch had gotten a lot of business from the Parker House. The Parker family had a place up near there. And somewhere I read that they actually paid for the station at New Boston. They
Oh, okay.
had a swill train that came up with the leftovers from the Parker House.
They had the farm there, and some of the buildings still exist. They
Hmm.
sell their food, much of their own food, especially pigs and things, they do that. They ship the product.
In the 19th century, they had done that out in Framingham, and I guess Framingham got too messy.
Now we move back down to the Central Mass. This is the Gilbertson Depot, which was a pizzeria in the fall of 2010. You can see the order board mast still remains with the lenses. The actual blades are gone, but building's still pretty identifiable. And I believe the right-of-way was right where that Kia's parked in the background there. You can kind of see where it would go off into the woods. I drove along followed the branch as best I could all the way through the very rural towns of Central Mass all the way out to Northampton, and it was a very long drive. It's all back roads. There's no doesn't really parallel a major highway at any point. You kind of have to piece together different roads that trace it, but different little pieces of it are being used, and it's all being interconnected now as a rail trail too. This is the depot up in Williamstown, and I've always had trouble getting a good picture of this station because those canopies are so long. I never know how exactly to frame it, how to cut it off, where to crop it, but I've always loved this beautiful stone station, and my older sister went to college at Williams, so usually if I went out to go visit her, I'd always go down there to make a stop, and I never did get to see a train go through here, though, which was always a little disappointing.
Passenger service ended in 1958.
Yep, that's right, 1958.
November 30th, 1958.
Okay, what time?
Oh, probably about 5 o'clock when the last eastbound came through. From Williamstown.
That's right, it was the end of the line from January to November.
Yeah.
We cut back from Troy.
Carl, can I hold you to that if I fact check that?
Go ahead. Look, I can't be too far off, because there's only 24 hours in a day.
All right, so we're back up to Old Orchard now. Again, just an example. You see the Downeaster coming. You never know what trains could have a bunch of extra equipment on them. This was a very interesting consist, as you can see. Looks like 2 F units, an additional 2 coaches, and another engine at the end there. Again, what I thought was just going to be a classic Downeaster shot at Old Orchard turned out to be probably one of the more interesting equipment moves I've caught on that train. So I've just learned, if you know the Downeaster's coming, always get ready to photograph it because you never quite know what you might see on it. This was another central Gleasondale Junction, I believe, where at one point the Maynard or the Central Mass crossed over the Marlborough branch. This was taken in the fall of 2010. You can see the abutment, still a piece of iron left on the Central Mass up top there. I wasn't able to climb up onto the embankment just due to the steepness as well as quite a bit of poison ivy, so even I have some limitations as to where I'll go. But it was still pretty cool to see that piece of rail sticking out there. It's with both lines now being rail trails, this has been a destination of mine to revisit just to see what it might look like now. Hopefully there's still some stuff left to see, but I wouldn't be surprised if the area has been changed in the more recent years.
There's a small iron trestle in Hudson, and I know when I got out to Marlborough in the late 70s, there was rail from 1891 in New York.
Yeah, not too surprising, just given the history of the. So this is Eagle Bridge, fall of 2010. I was going out to Albany to visit a college friend of mine, and one area of the B&M that I have very limited knowledge on is the West End. I've just never really explored very much, just because number one, it's pretty far from sort of where my home base is, and number two, I just haven't really been out there for too many reasons. This was one case though. I was heading out to the Albany area, so I drove out along the former Fitchburg, stopped at Eagle Bridge, and just dumb luck, I was there for maybe 3 minutes photographing what remains of the depot, and this freight just came right through. So I had no idea. I didn't have a scanner, nothing. I was just, sometimes it's just being at the right place at the right time. I've learned over the years, and sunlight wasn't ideal. I got some sunspots on the shop, but it was still pretty cool to see the auto rack train come through. Then, as you can see here, the Eagle Bridge Depot still standing. I believe it still kind of looks like this today. Hopefully, maybe someday something will be done with it. I feel like it's a beautiful structure. It's always kind of reminded me of a witch's hat. I don't know if anyone else ever thought that, or maybe that's just me.
That's where, I think some work was done to that a few years ago, including a new roof.
Okay, that's
I remember reading it somewhere. I say a couple of years ago, maybe before COVID, maybe it was a local historical group or something. I don't know.
yeah.
That's where the D&H branch comes down and Greenwich and Johnsonville.
Yeah, again, another location. I feel like there's no mistaking that station building in my. I'm not aware of any other on the B&M that ever had that appearance. I mean, you see this building, you immediately know where you are. I mean, despite the fact the location itself is pretty out of the way. I remember I was on back roads for quite a while that day, wondering where eventually it would spit me out at the end. Eventually, I did make it to Albany. But it was, quite a drive through some of those rural towns up in that upstate New York area. Claremont and Concord branch. This is 1 mile out of downtown Concord. Claremont Junction, 56 miles, and the old crossing signal pole stands in the background. Milepost does still stand there to this day, but the paint is pretty badly faded. So this was fall of 2010, and since then, the paint job on the milepost, you can barely discern the markings.
Is that by Pond Road? Or the end of North State Street?
Yes, it's not far from North State Street. That's correct.
Yeah, there's a crossing. I got a picture of an SW1 coming through there after dropping coal off at the state prison.
Yeah, and I think, actually, Rick, I might have seen this in one of your New England Southern books. I think they were storing equipment on this stub of track up until...
Cement Quebec cars until maybe 15 years ago.
Yeah, so not too long ago in the grand scheme of things.
Took a caboose train up to the Pierce Mansion in the late 90s.
Yeah, which is...
Anything went up that far. I think they were going to Swenson's until the late 80s, maybe.
Yeah. When I got out of the military, I mowed grass at Blossom Hill in early 70s. I remember seeing GP7 coming up that
They used to
line.
take the road car up north.
That, so there must be kind of heavy around.
Yeah, 2 Alcos and a GP7 would go out to Swenson's and get stuff. Oh,
They
yeah.
were doing switching at Swenson's.
Milepost base. This is along the old White Mountains in West Rumney, New Hampshire. Another day that Ben English and I teamed up to see what we could find on this old line. And not a whole lot left, but some of these signal bases, they're going to be there for the next 100 years. Hopefully, it's not generally items that collectors tend to go after. So you can still see the contact points there as well. The one on the left has the moss growing around it, and it was had to dig it out a little bit under the leaves. But this was, I believe, in Rumney. It's actually called Railroad Track Road, right off of Route 25 that follows the old right-of-way along the river. We were able to drive quite a bit of it, but I think today, last time I was up in that area, there was a sign saying the road got washed out. Nobody lives along it or anything, so I think it was just kind of a rural back road. That's what became of the right-of-way, and I think you could probably still hike down there to this day, but I'm not sure if it's passable by a vehicle at this point. Festive Downeaster shot heading westbound through Dover with the wreath on. I always love how they make the train nice and festive around the holidays. Now this was the winter of 2011, aka the first winter that it just snowed and snowed and snowed. When I was finally able to shovel out of it, I went up. I did a whole Downeaster day one Saturday in February of 2011. This is a shot I took at Durham UNH. You can see a family there waiting to get onto the train, and there's always a lot of activity at this station with all the college students and the dairy bar located in the station building, and just a neat location to photograph too with the tangent and the signals, and it's always been a favorite of mine. And of course, you think New Hampshire winter, you think snow, so.
I read that station had been used to be East Lynn, Massachusetts.
Yes, that's,
From my home.
yep, that's correct. It was, I think it was moved up there in 1912, I believe. So same day, a lot more snow than in Durham. I guess they didn't have as many places to put it down in Exeter. But so this was another westbound Downeaster heading past the old B&M station. And again, just a reminder of how this winter was really not bad compared to some past winters we've had as I was going through these photos. Then this was the winter of 2012. This is Ashland, New Hampshire. There wasn't a ton of snow because if you look carefully to the left, you can see there are no snowmobile tracks and you can just barely see the railhead sort of covered in snow. So this was a winter we didn't get a lot of snow even up in New Hampshire, and I'm not sure if that winter the corridor ever officially opened for snowmobiles because I just don't think there was enough of it. And this was probably one of the more major snow coverings they had at the time. But I thought it was a pretty picture though. Then this building on the right here, I believe, is the old Kennebunkport station on the Kennebunkport line, which was a branch off of the Western. Yeah, a lot of additions built onto it over the years, but that old photos I've seen, that turret is pretty unmistakable. So, you know, for anyone who's interested in the history of the stations, it's pretty rare that a station will be totally renovated to the point that you can't discern anything at all. For the most part, if you look carefully at the roof line, at various structures on the building, you can almost always tell what its previous use was. Freight train heading west through Exeter. I was standing on the old B&M platform. This was May of 2012, I believe I took this shot. Yeah, this was some Pan Am power. And, then this was a hike in the summer up in the Crawford Notch area at the site of the Wiley House. You can see that's my backpack over there to the lower left and the foundation of the building and the sign. You can see some more hikers in the distance on the left there waiting to cross the train tracks after the train comes through. And 252 has the air conditioning on. You can tell by the open door there.
Looks like a dome car further down.
Yep, that is the dome car further down. Yeah, and I think this was another hike I did with Ben English Jr. We took a day and just pretty much drove all through Crawford Notch. And when we stopped here, we hiked down the right of way a little to get this photo, and the old telegraph pole can be seen there on the right as well. So if anyone out there ever tells you you cannot incorporate a freight train and a stand-up paddleboarder in the same picture without Photoshop, I present to you Exhibit A here. So this is Pine Point. You got a guy out there just enjoying his paddleboard, and then across the marsh with my telephoto lens, I was taking a photo of the freight train and the paddleboarder. So just, again, like I said about Pine Point, the trains, they integrate with the landscape very well there, even though it's kind of like a summer, you know, you get there, you feel like you're in like an L.L. Bean catalog with the lobster boats, the fishermen, the kayakers, but, you know, then you see the freight trains or the Downeaster come through, and there's plenty to satisfy a rail fan as well. This was a shot I took in Wolfboro in the fall of 2012. Kind of a view you don't see often. It was taken across the water. I had gone on a hike with a few friends of mine, and we stopped at just a local brewery afterwards to have a few beers, and this view was pretty much right across from us. And I feel like you see a lot of pictures of the station taken from the road or from the parking lot, but it was just interesting to get the shot of it across the water as well. I feel like it's something, it gives you sort of the whole side view of the building, and yeah, one of the more iconic stations on the B&M system. And interesting fact, a local high school, Tech Voc High School, I believe, restored a lot of the woodwork and trim on it, because I believe at one point the turret got struck by lightning. I think that was in like the 1980s at some point. So now we get into a milepost shot here. This is a on the former Georgetown branch, branching off from just east of Bradford Station on the former Western. So unfortunately, this milepost is no longer here. I was recently riding through there on the Downeaster. You used to be able to pretty clearly see it, but definitely not there anymore. You can kind of see in the background, they're starting to do construction for the rail trail that's there now. And unfortunately, I guess the milepost got destroyed or removed, but I didn't think I had actually taken a photo of this, but I was looking through, when I was putting this presentation together, looking through my pictures, and when I saw this, I was wicked excited because I was always kicking myself for not getting a picture of it, but here it is. Overhead shot of the Downeaster up in Durham, New Hampshire. Nice. Always love to take shots from this overhead bridge here. Really great vantage point, and it was beautiful. Beautiful day for photography. One of those late winter days. Spring was in the air. I think I might have even gotten an ice cream after I took this picture. So back to the Bemis branch. This is there were two trestles on the Bemis branch between Waltham Tower and the endpoint at Bemis. This was the second of the two, crossed over the Charles River just to the west of where the current day shopping plaza is with the Shaws, etc. This trestle has since been removed. I took this picture in April of 2013, I believe. Unfortunately, the reason I remember that exact date is I do remember the next day was the Boston Marathon bombing, because I took this hike with some friends the day before that, and this was taken right before that event, and this was the trestle, one of the two timber trestles along the branch, which
Somebody has already tried to torch it, I think. It looks burned.
yeah, unfortunately, these timber trestles, and especially after the lines were abandoned, they seemed to frequently be targets for arsonists, unfortunately, and I think you can see in the background the current bridge over the Charles River that's part of the Riverwalk has been built there, and this trestle is obviously on borrowed time with the railroad being abandoned.
There also used to be a low trestle, wooden trestle on the central mast in Waltham, east of Waltham North. I never took a picture of it.
This is a crossing on the Stoneham branch right around the Montvale Junction. This crossing apparatus is now gone as they've cleared this all out for the rail trail. But I think this was taken in the spring of 2013 as well.
Up at Washington Street, there was a wigwag as late as 1973. That's the main drag from Winchester north.
Another part of the old Georgetown branch. This is maybe a mile east of Bradford. This is right by, there's currently a marina there now, and I think this has since been removed. It was a very low clearance bridge, and the access road under it is out of service at this time. And like I said, I think this has totally been changed now and is now a rail trail. I got a few station shots now that I've taken over the years. This is Worcester Union Station. Simply a beautiful building. Didn't always look this nice. It got very nicely restored, I think, in the 1990s, early 2000s, and it's really a crown jewel in the city. It's beautiful. Sits in the middle of this massive rotary with a park in the center, and very attractive building. It's just as nice on the inside too. So if you're ever in Worcester, it's definitely worth stopping in and checking out.
To the right, is that the old former tower, that brown building?
You know, I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't know if somebody else out there might know.
What was the question?
That brown building to the right of the station, is that the tower at one time?
No, that's not the tower.
I don't think so. But the brown,
The tan sort of light brown as opposed to the dark brown on the left.
Well, actually, the tower is behind the station. That's where the B&M and the New Haven exchanged locomotives for the Bar Harbor Express in the state of Maine. And it's a conventional B&M tower, looks just like the one in Waltham.
Ah. Thank you, Silvio Conti.
Okay, so moving off the B&M for a quick moment. This is Hartford Union Station. I just included it because I've always thought it's a very beautiful building, but kind of a unique structure. Another building that's pretty unmistakable when you see it. And then we'll go up to Burlington, Vermont. This station's always also been a favorite of mine as well, and this is one of a few other shots I have in Burlington in this presentation. And definitely a neat city for a rail fan for sure. We got the Downeaster now, heading past Bradford Depot there on the right. Currently in use as a laundromat, I believe.
Do they ever wash up there occasionally?
I'm sorry? All right, so right here, this is in Somerville, actually, along the former New Hampshire main line. You can see the tracks down bottom. This is actually part of the original staircase that would have taken you down to what was the Winter Hill station. So I think this is gone now because due to a Green Line extension, which was constructed here. But I took this, I think it was 2014, 2015. So there were still a few pieces of B&M infrastructure in this area because obviously Somerville at one point had many B&M stations, which obviously all got disused over the years as MBTA service sort of encroached. But interesting to see the original stairway and staircase handles. Yeah, very ornate back in those days. Nothing was simply utilitarian. Even a staircase baluster was made to look nice and elegant.
What street would that be?
I think this might have been, I want to say either Lowell Street or possibly Cedar Street.
Not Broadway.
No, definitely not Broadway, but yeah.
One day there was a extra with a crane and one gondola. They freight that off from the yard 8 to Somerville Junction. He didn't get past the interlock and he had that gondola full with all kinds of rubbish. They needed like a 6-car train to get all that junk out of the way.
Ooh, wow.
We roll down the embankment all the time.
Yeah.
This is a shot I took at Springfield. This was a CT rail service which started up between New Haven and Springfield to supplement the Springfield shuttle trains that Amtrak operates. The engine here is painted in the New Haven heritage scheme, which I thought was really nicely done. Great to Connecticut. Really, they really seem to appreciate this rail service that started up in, I think it was 2018 that CT Rail really got going. So it's been a pretty large asset to the state.
The service to Greenfield, has that actually continued or is that not running?
Yeah, that still runs. I think there's one train a day in each direction. Personally, I always found the schedule for that train to be a little odd. I think the northbound to Greenfield is early in the morning, then the southbound is like late. I feel like if there's a way that they can do it, I feel like they should try to add some more trains on the route. But for now, hopefully they'll be able to expand it over the years.
Any schedule out on that Fall River free train service in April?
Yeah, schedule's out on the MBTA's website, I believe. I think starts Monday, March 24th.
Not the easiest thing to
If you
read.
go on YouTube, there's East Coast Rail. It has a bunch of postings, work trains and so on. You can see.
Another Downeaster shot, this time in Dover, New Hampshire, Bluebird Day. Now this little building is actually right next to Wakefield Station, and I've been told that this is actually the former Linfield Center building on the Newburyport branch that got moved to Wakefield at some point after passenger service ended, which if you look at it closely, it does look similar to the building at South Sudbury that was also a B&M station. So interesting to see sometimes where, always interesting to see where sometimes some of these buildings end up after passenger service ends. This was a special charter in the summer of 2019 on the Pompanusic branch. This was the beginning of the trip at White River Junction. They ran all the way up to Wells River and back. That was a fun chase along the Pompey Route 5, parallels it pretty closely the whole ride. So yeah, a lot of great photo options, and weather was beautiful that day as well. Here's a shot of the Vermonter heading south at the depot at Waterbury. This has always been another favorite location of mine. Again, another station that's truly unique. The turret there on the upper left is pretty unmistakable, and just
Green Mountain Coffee Factory.
Yep, yeah, Waterbury. It's a great little town. A lot of great restaurants, coffee. If you're ever heading up to Burlington, I highly recommend stopping in Waterbury. Plenty of great restaurants, great little town to explore. So it's it's a very, very unique place, and there's a lot to see and do there. So.
Yeah, if you want a great cup of coffee, go in there, because that's where the hospitality center is.
Yes, that's right. Yep, the Welcome Center is right. Yep, and there are some beautiful old, I think there are some old photos too inside there of train pictures from back in the old days as well. This is in Dunstable, Mass, right on the Nashua-Dunstable state line. So this is the old state line marker. You can see NH for New Hampshire, obviously, N for Nashua up top there. Then 1894, I presume, is the day that this was put in place there, and to the best of my knowledge, still exists there to this day. This was taken about 10 years ago, maybe.
So is this in Nashua, Acton, and Boston?
Yes, this would have been the Nashua, Acton, and Boston, correct.
Didn't get much use out of it. I think it was abandoned in 1925.
Yep, and locals, I believe, called it the Red Line because it never made a profit. It was always operating in a deficit.
It was built as a threat to the Nashua and Lowell, Boston Lowell complex.
Yeah.
Because it allowed the Concord Railroad to connect with the Pittsburgh.
Yep, and as many of you know, too, there are 3 beautiful stone arch bridges along this right-of-way that can easily be... Yep, there are 2 in Dunstable, 2 small ones in Dunstable, and there's the huge one in Westford. Yeah, and all 3 of them are pretty easy hikes, so definitely...
If you're interested in the line, member Rick Hurst and the Westford Historical Society have updated and reissued the history of the Nashua, Acton, and Boston, and it can be purchased probably on the Town Historical Society's website. It's quite interesting.
We sold it out. We usually have that built out.
Oh, do we?
Yeah, we sold it out at Springfield, so I'm waiting on more.
Yeah, but abandoned 100 years ago this year, June or July of 1925.
Another Vermonter shot heading south towards Springfield, or Holyoke from Northampton, right alongside Route 5, so it's pretty easy to pull over and get some pictures. And the time of day is nice too, because you're looking east, so the sunlight really helps you get a good photo. This was a Downeaster detour shot. This is taken in my hometown of Melrose. This is the Stone Arch Bridge over Melrose Street. It's, I believe it's the only section of Melrose that has a 1-lane underpass. And yep, Downeaster on the detour there. The former Newburyport branch in Danvers. This is the location of the Tapleyville stop, which was in the neighborhood of Danvers. Still some iron there. You can see the rail trail there to the upper left. And this is another shot of the Newburyport branch. That is the one and only Route 1 right ahead, where I still can't believe this. At one point, this line did cross this highway at grade. I have no memory of ever seeing anything crossing here. I was pretty young by the time I was...
71 abandoned.
Okay, yep, so that would explain that. And I still... I mean, I drive down this section of Route 1 all the time now, and I could not imagine being the flagman, having to get out and stop that traffic barreling down there at like 55.
Flagging Fresh Pond Park.
Yeah, yeah.
I saw that.
Just in the Peabody, they had a Morton Fire called rocket fuel plant that was served by the BNM.
Wow.
Yeah, right there in Brooksby Village there.
Is that part of the old Hyde line to get around the Salem Tunnel? Not that one? Okay.
Got a Springfield shuttle train heading south through the, I think this is called the Brightwood neighborhood of Springfield. Granite milepost is gone. You can see they built a wooden one in its place. We're 2 miles north of Springfield Union Station. So the Brightwood station would have been right where I was standing for this shot. No idea when it was taken down. Rail trail conversion on the Central Mass. This was, drove by one day just to check on the progress, and this massive excavator was parked right by the Linden Street overpass.
Route 60, wow.
Yep, Route 60 right down below there, large abutments.
Are they keeping the bridge or is it going to?
Yep, bridge is going to be there, part of the rail trail, and this old signal box was still there as well too. Not sure if they totally removed it or if they were going to try to preserve it along the rail trail, but
Right near the Furman lumber on Route 60.
yep, this was so basically the signal box was right behind where I was standing to take the previous shot.
Interesting incident on that bridge. The freight car come out of California, it got refrigeration lost, carload of potatoes. It was a drop chute covered hopper.
Hmm.
And it got shopped again, flat wheels in Chicago. By the time it came to Cambridge, there was about 5,000 flies following that car.
Oh wow.
So I got the call from Freight Claim to park that on that bridge. And Casella Farms was gonna unload it with a dump truck underneath it. So within 2 hours, I had the Waltham police calling me, threatening my life. Get that car the hell out of there.
CSX heading through Andover. This was shortly after the CSX acquisition of Pan Am. Yep, Vale. Yeah, it's a great parking area for a rail fan. You got the signals right there, and
Must be Wild Rose Dairy there.
Yeah.
It's a great spot to stop the train to get pizza.
I was gonna say Connor or Cullen. I wonder if one of you guys is.
I was on a local out here, out of Lawrence, 2 years ago. District 2 held us there for like 3 passenger trains, and there's like this little sandwich shop / pizza place like right next to the interlocking. So it was like,
Yeah.
I just strolled over, grabbed a couple slices, back on the engine.
Yeah, I got a sandwich there once. It was very good. Yeah. Then this is closest train station to my own house, Wyoming Hill on the former Western Main Line. Got a little snow shot on this. Just a. Yep. Yeah. I always kind of felt like this has that like snow globe feeling, and it's nice to be nice on days like this to be able to walk to these places to get these shots, because I can tell you the roads were pretty treacherous.
Was that one of the stops, streets where they had a crossing tender?
Yes, I have. There's a great Tom Nelligan photo from the early 70s that shows some Bud cars crossing with the shanty and clear. The shanty would have been just to the left of where that car is waiting for the gates to come up. So this was a manned crossing at one point.
Shortly after I hired out, there used to be a switch tender at Melrose Highlands, operating the crossovers for a turnaround that came out of Boston and switched over and went back in at Melrose Highlands. And shortly after I hired out, they abolished the job.
Another shot of the Newburyport branch. This is just beyond where the switch off the western is at Wakefield Junction. You can see the old platform curbing there to the left from the old station. So this stub is still intact. It's about the only piece of the old Newburyport that does still remain. The MBTA does still park maintenance away equipment there on occasion. But yeah, for the most part, pretty much the rest of the Newburyport branch is long gone. I've always liked this shot of the Downeaster. You can see there's a little boy in the foreground there, and you can see his mother too behind their SUV waving at the train. And I do remember the engineers gave him quite a horn show, and he got so excited, and it was just a really nice rail fanning moment to see the younger generation interested, and seeing the engineers acknowledge, and just seeing how excited he got. It really it was a very, very memorable shot for me at Plastow, New Hampshire. So this sign, this is actually inside the current Banners sports bar at the Boston Garden right now. I don't believe this is the original stone facade of the building of the old Boston Garden that got torn down, but still pretty cool to see the owners of Banners, want to recognize the B&M heritage of the former building. And,
it's only about 2/3 the size of the actual sign, and they didn't have the word railroad. They had the word railroad underneath.
Oh, okay, yep.
And Robert, when they opened, Robert Jones and I were salivating, wondering if indeed it was the original sign, and then we found out no, it couldn't be. But apparently, there's a private dining area is in the where the windows are.
Oh, okay. I think I was probably the only one at the bar who was looking at the sign, and not I think it was the Bruins on the TV there. But yeah, everyone was looking one way. I was looking the other way. So this is the former B&M Essex branch. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I took a little hike one day, and this was one of those branches I always thought that not much remained, but I was actually proven wrong. There's a decent amount that you can still find, and this is the right-of-way just beyond Hamilton Wenham. You can see it's a pretty clear path in the woods. A lot of local residents use it for like I passed a runner, I passed a dog walk, so it's pretty. And you can kind of see there's a gas line marking that yellow and white pole up ahead. So the right-of-way pretty much all the way into Essex is fairly easy to discern. This is the view closer to downtown Essex. You can see the salt marsh in the background there. And there was a whole, this was kind of a fun little hike because I had an old B&M bulletin from many, many years ago that showed like the layout of the former yard and the former tracks, and I was able to piece together quite a bit of this Essex area that had always sort of been a mystery to me. So this was a fun little hike, and just a reminder, even if you think something's long gone, go see what you can find, because oftentimes it's pretty rare that you'll find that literally nothing remains of something. You just kind of have to sometimes be a little persistent. And
seriously appreciated your comment there. He's a big shipwreck hunter in this case. That was his philosophy and stuff. If you're about something, go look for it.
Yeah, I can probably count on one hand the number of times I've gone out searching for something that I've come back completely empty-handed. It does happen at times, but it's usually pretty unusual. Or unusual.
In that case, it doesn't cost as much as Clyde Custer's shipwreck hunting.
Exactly. I think that probably just cost me the cost of my iced coffee that morning. And so here, this was on a side road in Essex. I forget the name of it, but former milepost on a driveway. And you can see, you can even see the driveway stakes put around it just to make sure his snowplow contractor doesn't knock it over. So I thought that was pretty cool. Obviously, somebody really appreciates having that on their property now, and wants to make sure the local plow guy doesn't whack into it in the wintertime. These are bridge abutments just outside of downtown Essex. I forget the name of that little creek right there, but you can clearly see the roadbed to the left and the bridge abutment. So again, even this line was abandoned right around World War II. So Yeah, 41, winter of 41, I think.
They brought a lot of wood to Essex to build boats. It was a big boat building.
Then,
Missouri Shipyard. Dana Story was on the board for a while with the B&M.
another shot of the Newburyport branch. This is in Wakefield, I believe, part of it where they, or actually, I'm sorry, Linfield. This is right where the old Linfield passenger station would have been, and currently awaiting rail trail conversion. Turntable base at Jewett, Maine. Yeah, this is Maine. And, pretty, you can't really see it, but it was filled with some pretty nasty mosquito-infested water, so it didn't get too close to it, but it was still pretty cool to see, and there's a little makeshift plaque over there just reminding you what it is. Stone Arch Bridge at Springvale, Maine on the Worcester, Nashua, and Portland. 1896 was the date. This was right outside the downtown area. It's a popular trail right above it, so pretty easy to see. This was taken, I think, like probably summer of 2023, I believe.
No tiles fell yet, huh?
No, it's they built them to last back then. Jesse, I don't know if you remember, this was taken from your speeder that day, the Ossipee Branch track car. Yep. So this was kind of riding on the old Conway Branch, very scenic route that I had never seen because it goes pretty far from any roads or anything through the woods. Then a milepost along the way, been nicely repainted. Long way from Boston. Bennington Depot, nicely repainted up in New Hampshire there. Freight action at Air, Norfolk Southern Power, the old B&M Tower, so you got a mix of the old and the new. This was taken off fall of 2023. Doesn't look like much here, but this is actually the old Bristol, New Hampshire turntable pit. You can just if you look carefully, you can kind of see the semicircular formation, and part of the actual stone foundation is over there towards the right side behind that large tree. A buddy of mine and I hiked down there a few years ago, and it was pretty, again, like a place that I wasn't sure if I was going to find anything at all, and this would have been pretty easy to walk by, like in the summer months under full foliage, but it was pretty, once you see it, it's pretty easy to connect some pieces, so that was a cool find, and I think eventually they're going to make the branch into a rail trail down to Profile Falls, but some pretty challenging topographical obstacles have to be overcome. Another milepost on the Newburyport branch. This is up in Georgetown, 8 miles from Newburyport, 32 from Boston. This was a section that was abandoned in 1941, so cool to see some posts still survive up on this corridor, and this wasn't the only one that I was able to find. Vermonter heading southbound at Greenfield, Mass. a few years ago. Rainy, miserable day. Another Downeaster detour westbound through Melrose Highlands. I remember it was a crystal clear day, but it was freezing that morning. So this is another shot from the old Bemis branch, and Rick, after I saw the picture of Tom Nelligan's you put in your Highliner issue a few years back, I went out to do a then and now shot, and this is what I got from where that little freight train was crossing the road. Hard to tell a railroad came through here as recently as the year 2000. So, I mean, like I said, it's pretty rare that all traces of something get erased, but in this case, I had to use that building on the left as a reference point, because not a whole lot of evidence of what was once there.
What was that building?
I'm not sure what it was. I believe it's currently a plumber uses it as offices. I think that van there is associated with the building.
At one time, Bemis had multiple tracks, a freight office with a general agent and everything there. It's a busy location. Yeah, I mean, for a small branch, the Watertown branch in general, a
lot of business, a lot of industrial business. It was a very active area of Waltham, Watertown. Yeah, a lot of productivity along that little branch line.
My father was a conductor in the 50s in the Fitchburg Division, and the local going up the Watertown branch would go up with a dozen cars. Star Market had at least 2 tracks, perishable and canned goods. Of course, you had to set handbrakes on your train that you'd set off on the main and do the switching between the empties out, the loads in, and setbacks and everything else. Did almost can on the branch for crying out loud, between Watertown branch, Watertown Arsenal. There was a cold storage place up there, and family foods. It was a busy little.
Yeah, lot going on there. This is closer to Watertown Square. I always find it fascinating when I find a bridge with no bridge underneath it, if you know what I mean. Yep, so the tracks at one point went underneath, this is Main Street here that I'm standing on, and yep, tracks went right underneath there, and at some point after abandonment they filled it all in, but kept the bridge there, so I'm sure that's confused a few people over the years. This is Watertown, just outside Watertown Square.
Funny and think that they abandoned like 6-7 years after finishing the bridge. Well, government work.
Then Wayland turntable base here, just west of the Wayland Depot. Obviously, I believe they built the power lines in the early 50s, so this turntable hasn't been used in many, many decades, but foundation is very well intact though, which is pretty cool.
Rick Conard cleaned out that area.
Yeah.
He resurrects the branch through Wayland.
Yeah, he gave me an awesome tour of that whole area. That's I've always found Wayland pretty cool because you have a turntable base, a depot, a freight house, there are mileposts, there's a switch. You have pretty much almost every possible artifact available in one. Yeah, and there was a water tower there. So it's Wayland, I think, is pretty unique in that regard. There's a lot to see there, except the only thing you won't see is an actual train. Just a photo of the Belmont station I took. Always been a favorite of mine. Yeah, gorgeous stonework and the sort of a Spanish style influence on the roof and everything. Always been a favorite of mine.
The railroad abandoned that what, in the early 50s?
Oh, at Wayland?
No.
This is still the active Fitchburg commuter rail line that goes through here.
They were stopping there until 58 and then started up again in 74. I used to live in Belmont.
Oh, yeah.
I think there was an agent there until like 1954.
Yeah. What's it, the Lions Club now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a local Lions Club.
Inside, but it doesn't look like railroad inside.
Then Peabody Center here. This is along the former, which has since been abandoned, the former line to what was Rousselot. Yep, which, no longer. I think August 31st of 2023, I think, was the last. And yeah, Connor, you were on that, right?
I was the last conductor on that.
Wow. Yeah, I forget where I was that day. Unfortunately, I couldn't go to see that. And that, yeah.
Info to everyone. You made up special signs for.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That Adams family type building is the Peabody City Hall.
Okay, yeah, beautiful downtown area there. This was the last May, the charter train that ran between Meredith and Lincoln on the former Pemigewasset branch. This is Campton, just south of where the station site was. Then a little further north, coming around the bend, Route 3 is up on the embankment. This is Thornton. Another milepost, Bristol, 6 miles. This is in front of the general store at Hill, New Hampshire on Route 3A. Nice to see they brought it up from the roadbed and preserved it where everyone can see it and enjoy it. I'm guessing maybe one person in 500 knows what it actually is at this point. But
And it's not in the right place, right? It got moved?
yeah, it got moved. The right-of-way was down the hill by the river, which flooded out. Then milepost on the northern what's now the rail trail and the former northern Mount Kearsarge. You can kind of see in the background there. 107 miles from North Station, and feels like you're a long way from anything along this section of the line. Downeaster shot heading through West Medford with engine 100. Budcar in Troy, New Hampshire. This is dated now because it's really undergoing some beautiful cosmetic restoration, and they've been doing a heck of a job on it. So it's really cool to see them make progress. Just a shot I took. This was the former Woburn Loop in the Wilmington area. Just thought it was interesting to see the flowers growing up next to the tracks, and just it's just seeing industry meshing with nature after abandonment. Another Downeaster shot through East Kingston. They speed right through there, and you get quite a horn show as well. Milepost along the former, the Western Main Line. This is right by the Wellington MBTA Orange Line stop. So you'll notice SB stands for South Berwick, which was the original destination of the Western Main Line back in the old days, prior to being completed all the way through to Portland.
A separate railroad from South Berwick, what was it, Portsmouth, Saco, and Portland?
Yes.
And the Eastern and the Boston and Maine jointly leased it. So the Eastern found a way to break the lease and grab the line. So the B&M had to build its own route to Portland, and that's how you run up, get to have two main lines to Portland.
Yep. And the fascinating thing about this milepost, you can see the current day commuter rail and orange lines over there to the left side. Just where it's situated behind that guardrail, if you're riding by on the train, you just can't really see it because you go through there so quickly. So I ride the Haverhill line 3 times a week at this point, and I had no idea this post was even there.
Yeah, I'll have to go over and look at it because I live in Medford.
Yeah, it's right in the sort of the thick of things, and you can tell like it's still like they landscape around it, and it's just good to great.
Like half a mile from Wellington Station.
Yeah, I'd say not even, maybe even just a quarter mile beyond it, heading towards Malden. Vermont Rail System parked at Burlington in the twilight. Took this shot last summer. This was the dinner train that runs down to I think Charlotte or Vergennes. The next day I took this shot of Unit 405 in the yard, just set. Yep, just. Not sure about that. This was last summer, just south of downtown Burlington. You can see the buildings of this was on the trail that runs alongside the railroad. Another Worcester, Nashua, and Portland milepost in Lebanon, Maine. 43 miles to Portland, Maine. This was taken last summer. Bridge abutment in Alford, Maine, along Route 202. My friend Ken Jackman and I explored this right-of-way last summer. That was a fun outing. We found some decent remains and found a little poison ivy as I was exploring this too, but fortunately I was able to avoid it. Another milepost. This one's in Gorham, Maine, on somebody's front yard now. Portland, 20 miles. Then back on the Boston and Albany, got a CSX intermodal freight at Palmer, heading east. And then venture quickly down to the New Haven territory. This is the Northeastern Depot. I've always loved this building, and hopefully someday trains will run by here again. And we'll see. With commuter rail resuming to Fall River and New Bedford, I'm optimistic that some future expansion down in this area could be possible as well. Vermonter train pulling out of Springfield. I believe this one's heading down to Washington. Downeaster coming westbound through the new Winchester Center commuter rail station. really great photo location to shoot the trains from. It's elevated above the roadway and really nice platform and facilities. So it's a favorite photo location of mine these days. Granite State Scenic Railroad Santa train coming south out of Lincoln. This was this past December.
Wow.
Yeah, nice little snow covering on the ground, just enough to make it festive. And another milepost on the Newburyport branch. Newburyport, 12 miles. This was in Boxford, Mass. A friend of mine and I took this hike through the woods and found this one. Like I said, for a section that was abandoned, coming up on 100 years now, there's still a decent amount to find. Lakeshore Limited heading west through Springfield, late afternoon in the wintertime. Then back to the old Lakeshore branch. This is the Alton Bay station. You can see a milepost there to the right of that SUV, and the tracks would have been on what right now is present-day Route 11. So it's a pretty neat branch to explore. Still a lot to see. A lot of depots still stand, and in the winter it's really cool because Lake Winnipesaukee behind it. Behind the station there in the bay becomes the Alton Ice Airport when the conditions are just right. So definitely worth venturing up there in the winter to check out. Another Downeaster shot through Winchester in the fresh snow. This was taken a few weeks ago after that storm we had. Another Downeaster shot waiting to come into North Station. Then one of the last shots I have, I had a photography teacher in high school who always said timing is everything in photography, and this is a prime example of that because where I was standing on the bridge, I couldn't move any further to the left to get those two engines directly next to each other, and the timing of how they passed each other just wasn't right for me to get a side-by-side shot. So, you know, I like that shot of 1129 I have there in the Heritage paint scheme, but I wish I'd been able to, you know, just set it up a little better. But then oftentimes I remember what I think it was my grandmother used to say, you get what you get and you don't get upset. So I think this was more of an example of that. Then this is Lakeshore Limited coming through Auburndale, Mass. This was close to where I grew up, right down the road. And yeah, still one Amtrak train a day through here, heading west, and one heading east. Then last shot of the day, we have Lakeshore Limited coming west through Framingham. This was taken last Sunday. Or I'm sorry, last Sunday actually. So we're back up to the present day. And with that, that's what I got for you today. Again, thank you everyone for coming out. It was a pleasure to share it all with you.
Do we have any questions?
That title picture you showed us before everything started, is that stone arch bridge, is that on Nashua and Acton and Boston?
No, that's actually in North Andover, Mass. That's at Weir Hill Reservation. It's on the former Salem and Lawrence branch.
Oh.
Yeah, abandoned in 1925, I believe. It is active. Like it was a Sunday when I was there. So